It's the book club for kids.
It's the book club for kids.
It's the book club for kids.
It's the book club for kids podcast.
Hi, I'm Kitty Felde. This week we speak with the legendary writer Lois Lowry, who has written more than a few books in her long career.
And I think I have written 52 books at this point. And you know, my favorite one is always the one that I'm working on.
Today, our readers from Taylor Elementary School in Northern Virginia discuss one of Lois Lowry's more unusual books, The Willoughbys.
It's just really different. I also found it a little bit just odd and funny, but even a little bit sad.
Our celebrity reader is no stranger to podcasts. It's the host of The Gist, Mike Pesca. He talks about a title that has become his philosophy in life.
And so often, before I catastrophize what really is normal, I think about the book, that we are generally making progress, even if it doesn't feel that way.
This is the Book Club for Kids, the show where kids talk about books. We'll tell you how you can be on the show a little later on, but first, let's meet our readers.
Hello, my name is Ravi.
Hello, my name is Grayson.
Hello, my name is Lila.
Hello, my name is Amelia, and we're all 5th graders at Taylor Elementary in Arlington, Virginia.
So the book is The Willoughbys. What's it about?
It's about these kids and these parents, and they both don't like each other, and they both want to get rid of each other.
It's kind of a funny book because the kids are trying to orphan themselves. The oldest is Tim, and then there are the 2 Barnabys, which are twins, and then there's the little girl, Jane.
And how would you describe these guys?
They're absolutely wild. The oldest, they make up this game where they get points for doing silly things, but the oldest never gets point because he's the oldest and the superior one.
Tim, the oldest, is really bossy. He's always bossing his little siblings around. They get a new nanny later in the book, and then she puts a stop to most of Tim's bossiness almost, and she gets rid of the point system and stuff.
Now, I'm the oldest in my family, and I guess probably my brothers would say I was bossy. Does anybody else consider themselves in the bossy category?
Out of my sister and I'm the oldest, and I think I'm totally bossy to her. Sometimes I tell her the way she should be doing things, or if she's doing something already, I'll tell her to do it more.
My younger brother and I share a room, so it gets really annoying at times. So I try and get him out of the room whenever I'm in there, and I even struck a deal with my parents. I stay in the closet if I'm reading and stuff, and he can't come in and bother me. And then for my sister, she always comes in our room, when we're doing homework and reading and stuff, so we shout at her, "Get out!" And then we made an agreement, if she comes in our room, we go in her room, and that really bothers her.
I am definitely bossed around. I have 2 older brothers, and they're both really nice, but really bossy. They tell me where to be since our house isn't, gigantic, and with 5 people in your family, there's never enough space for everyone.
I think both, because sometimes my little sister gets so annoying, so I just tell her, what to do.
So in this book, they keep talking about an old-fashioned book. What does Lois Lowry mean by that?
It's set in an old-fashioned time period, because there's, a coal bin downstairs and stuff. And then there's, this wood mansions with, coal fireplaces.
And they do it in, old-fashioned ways. There's no phones and stuff like that. And they get letters from their parents when their parents are on the cruise instead of, their parents just being here's some texting of what we just did.
To get somewhere, they don't, take the bus or a car or anything. They walk most places.
Talk old-fashioned. They act old-fashioned. By the way, Lois Lowry describes the Willoughbys' house. It's old-fashioned.
It almost makes you feel like the rest of the world isn't old-fashioned, the rest of the world is in a modern time, but they have to do things like an old-fashioned family because they are an old-fashioned family.
Yeah, and some of their solutions for things were old-fashioned, like what Lila was saying, finding a baby on their doorstep and then just deciding to leave it on a different doorstep. In modern times like today, I don't think if you found a baby on your doorstep, you would just put it on someone else's doorstep.
What makes this book funny?
That they're trying to orphan themselves and that they always come up with the most ridiculous ideas, like turning themselves into a carpet or a lamp.
When the people were coming in to look at their house because their parents were trying to sell it, they were trying to camouflage themselves. So the oldest turned into a rug, the youngest turned into a lamp, and then one twin turned into a cactus, and the other was a coat and hat holder.
When they found a little baby on their doorstep, they were like, what is this monstrosity? And they found a way to get rid of it by carrying it to the old mansion who made billions of dollars. The man made billions of dollars because he was a candy maker. And then they were also so greedy that they were like, if there was any reward to be found for this baby, please send it to the Willoughbys.
It's also ridiculous that, the candy maker, usually candy makers are really happy and everything, but this candy maker was, just depressed, which is kind of, not supposed to how it's supposed to be.
Well, let's meet that mysterious millionaire candy maker and find out exactly why he is a bit depressed. Our celebrity reader is Mike Pesca, host of the longest-running daily news podcast, The Gist.
He was sad because he had lost his wife. He had not actually been very fond of her, but it was sad nonetheless to be wifeless. She had been a dull but tidy and meticulous lady who had kept the house in perfect, almost too perfect order. The commander's true, deep, unending sadness was because he had lost his only child, a small boy, while mother and son had been enjoying, without him, what had promised to be a lovely holiday. Their private railroad car had been buried by an avalanche near an Alpine village 6 years before, and crews of workers had been digging ever since through the towering piles of snow, but had not yet uncovered the wreckage. For a long time, Commander Melanoff had received a daily message about the progress of the search. 7 inches today, but a blizzard has halted operations for the time being, one message had reported. Only 2 inches uncovered today due to fog and several unfriendly mountain goats, said another. The messages had come daily for a long time, then less frequently. But even now, after 6 years, were still slipped occasionally through the mail slot in his front door. He had stopped reading them years before. Each morning that a piece of mail with a Swiss postage stamp arrived, he whimpered, picked it up, and added it, unopened, to the stack in the corner that had now reached an alarming height, and had, in places, been shredded by mice making nests. Sometimes he looked mournfully at the stack and realized that his meticulous wife, had she not been lost in such a tragic way, would have sorted it, arranged it alphabetically, filed it by date and size, and perhaps even by the color of the stamp. It made him nostalgic to think how organized he found that he could not recall her name, had been. But enough about sadness. Something had happened, and now Commander Melanoff's life, surprisingly, was about to change. One morning, when he plodded into the hall to pick up the mail, he heard a sound from the porch. Of course, there were often sounds from the world outside, but this was not the usual sound of squirrels gnawing on the wooden railings or pigeons strutting about on the rotted floorboards. He was familiar with those sounds and had ignored them for years. This sound was different. It was a piteous wail. Commander Melanoff leaned over and poked open the mail slot with his index finger. He peered through and saw something amazing. He saw a stubbly-haired baby in a basket.
I couldn't figure out that it was a funny book at first. I kept sort of getting mad at the book because I thought, what? Did you guys know immediately that it was a humorous book?
For the first few chapters, I was like, this is an okay book. But then when I started getting more in depth into the book, I realized it's supposed to be very, very funny.
I thought it was going to be sad because when they put the baby on the mansion doorstep, they talked about how the man never came out of his house and how he's so depressed. So I thought it was going to be about him and that he was sad.
So I read the first half of the book and it wasn't really funny. So then before reading the second half, I went back and reread it, and suddenly everything about it was funny.
One other thing Lois Lowry isn't afraid to do is use language that's difficult. Did you guys get stumped by some of the vocabulary in here?
Yeah, some of the words I had never seen before, and she doesn't really give too many context clues.
Some of the words were difficult, but I read a lot of books like that have the difficult words in it, so I could guess what most of them were like. Like, this one sounds like a word that I've heard before. So some of them were hard, but I used my knowledge before to figure out what they were.
I tried fitting in like different synonyms for the words. Like, if I thought this word meant one thing, I would find another synonym for it. I'd put it in and I'd see if it made sense. If it didn't, I'd go back and try and find another one.
Close to the beginning, I did not think I was going to know many of the words because there was like a couple words that I didn't know. I don't know a lot of words, honestly. Well, some of them were like I didn't know, but some of them I could like guess.
Is this book like anything else you've ever read? Does this remind you of anything?
I don't think it was like anything that I have ever read at all. And I have read a ton of books, but it's just like really different. I also found it a little bit just odd and funny, but even a little bit sad almost.
Yeah, I don't think I've read a book anything like this, and it's not really the type of book that I'd usually pick out. I don't know what types of books I usually read, but it's not usually that one. But after reading it, I think it was like pretty good.
It's the way that it's written, like her writing style. I've read a bunch of her other books, and she has this one way that she writes that's pretty much the same through all of her books.
Speaking of our writer, you guys got any questions for Lois Lowry?
How did you come up with the idea for the Willoughbys? It's really original.
Sometimes I actually get ideas when I'm in the shower. There is something about the warm water that turns my brain on, and that's how the idea for the Willoughbys came to me.
Why did you say that they're an old-fashioned family and use the words old-fashioned so many times?
Oh, because I was actually thinking, I'm extremely old myself, and I was thinking back to the stories that I read and loved when I was a kid. And now they seem very old-fashioned and actually kind of stupid. But those were the stories I was thinking about, and the elements of them, like the orphan baby on the doorstep. I mean, that's pretty silly, but those were really in books that I read as a kid. And they're old-fashioned.
What was the hardest character to create in the Willoughbys?
The kids were easy. I especially liked Jane. The parents, they were easy because they're so extreme, so exaggerated. And then we have the man, the wealthy man who has the candy factory. He was difficult, I guess. And then we have to go to Switzerland again, and there is the boy. But his mother, I'm going to vote for her as the most difficult, because what kind of mother would send her kid off with a backpack and say, you know, have a nice trip home, kid. I'm through with you.
Out of the Willoughbys, what's your favorite part?
You know, it takes place in two different locations. We don't know what city the first part is, but then we're in Switzerland. And I don't know, my favorite part, I think, was those stupid parents in Switzerland starting to climb an Alp. It made me laugh when I wrote it.
What is your favorite book that you've wrote?
And I think I have written 52 books at this point. And you know, my favorite one is always the one that I'm working on, because that's the one that's most in my mind. So when I go back and think about my very first book, I think, oh, I like that one. But I haven't thought about it in a long time. So right now, my favorite book is not yet published, and it has an odd title, which I will tell to you. And the title is Three Different Nouns. That's not the title. The title is the three nouns. The title is, ready? Tree, Table, Book. And so right now, that's the one I'm thinking about the most. And so it's my favorite today. don't ask me next week because it'll be different.
Well, now we come to the part of the show where we ask the hardest question. What is your favorite book and why?
My favorite book is Because of Winn-Dixie by Kate DiCamillo. It's really good, and I connect to it because I have a dog at home, and I have felt out of place somewhere before and kind of felt lonely and like I've had no friends.
My favorite book is definitely Keep It a Lost Cities. It's a series by Shannon Messenger. I also think I connect to it because I move a lot every 3 or 4 years, so I'm always at new schools and stuff. And the main character, Sophie, moves from a human world to a different world, so she feels really out of place.
And that's another one of our Book Club for Kids episodes. And again, we'll put a link at the website, bookclubforkids.org.
I can't really decide, but one of my favorite books is a book that I actually read for book club last year. It was called The Front Desk, and I really liked it because she went through like a lot of like problems, and I like it's not just like boring and there's like no problems. And like I think they're like a Chinese family. I'm not sure if they were Chinese, but they weren't what I am, and I like got to learn about what like Chinese families do.
My favorite book is Number the Stars by Lois Lowry, and it's my favorite book because it's historical fiction, first of all, and I really like historical fiction. And then I really like how Lois Lowry writes her books. She has a really unique writing style, and I thought it was just really well written, and I liked it a lot.
Lois Lowry, what is your favorite book?
I loved the Newbery Award-winning book called Sarah, Plain and Tall. That was one of my favorites, but that wasn't around when I was a kid. When I was a young person, say 10 years old, my favorite book, actually it would probably be very politically incorrect now, but the title of it was Indian Captive. Partly it was my favorite because the author was named Lois Lensky, and I very often get letters from kids who think they're writing to her, but they get me instead. But also, the main character in that book was based on a real person. Her name was Mary Jemison, and she was captured and went to live with Native Americans in, I forget, 1800 and something. And she spent her growing up years with them. And she had long, light blonde hair, and the illustrations made her look just like me. And the Indians that she lived with called her Corn Tassel because her hair looked like the corn silk at the end of an ear of corn. So I secretly, during that year that I was 10, thought of myself as Corn Tassel.
What about you, Mike Pesca? You got a favorite book?
My favorite book is a work of nonfiction by Greg Easterbrook. It's called The Progress Paradox. It doesn't tell a tale. It's not a coherent story. It is a thesis, I suppose, or an argument, and that thesis is laid out in the subtitle, How Life Gets Better While People Feel Worse. And it reflects my philosophy, but because I read it, 15 or 20 years ago, I have to credit it for shaping my philosophy. And so often, before I catastrophize what really is normal, I think about the book. I just actually, along the way, have kind of intuited the lessons of the book, that we are generally making progress, even if it doesn't feel that way. The kind of exceptional thing about this book is that it was written pre-internet, essentially, certainly pre-social media. So the notion that things feel especially bad now in this part of the first quarter of the 21st century because we're inundated with bad feelings and the catastrophization of others, well, it lays that bare. There's something in the human character that regards life getting better with the feeling that things have gotten worse. There are great quotes in there. There are great examples of everything from dog stairs to Florida air conditioning. And there's a good quote by Rousseau about possessing things that people are very unhappy to lose while never being pleased to actually possess. I am pleased to have read The Progress Paradox by Greg Easterbrook.
Well, there you have it. We'll have a list of everybody's favorite book at our website, bookclubforkids.org. And if you have a favorite book, you could be on the Book Club for Kids podcast too. Just have your teacher, parent, or librarian send us an email to kitty@bookclubforkids.org, and we will send you all the information. That's kitty, Kitty, @bookclubforkids.org. Thanks this week to producer Chad Francis. Brandon Baker composed our theme with additional music from Andrew Walton. Emma Steinkellner designed our logo. Thanks to our writer Lois Lowry and our celebrity reader, journalist and host of the Gist podcast, Mike Pesca. And thanks as well to our readers this week, Ravi, Grayson, Lila, and Amelia. And thanks to Sharon Gaston at Taylor Elementary School in Arlington, Virginia. We have a free newsletter for teachers, parents, and librarians full of free tips about how to turn kids into lifelong readers. You can sign up at our website, bookclubforkids.org. And by the way, if you are thinking about how to introduce civics concepts to kids, we have a very different sort of podcast. It's a mystery series about the 10-year-old daughter of a congressman who solves mysteries inside the U.S. Capitol and teaches civics along the way. It's called the Fina Mendoza Mysteries, and it's available now for free wherever you listen to podcasts. I'm Kitty Felde. Thanks so much for listening.